Hello, my name is Carl Torspins. I'm a retired deputy warden out of Arizona and New Mexico, totaling 25 years of experience inside the walls. And this training video is titled The 5 Perils of Corrections. Bear with me, as this might be a little bit longer than you're used to in seeing training videos, but I think it contains good and important information. I think that many people have no idea what a correctional officer does or endures during their career inside the penitentiary or large jails. They don't realize how filthy the job and the work environment is, and sometimes miss the fact that you could be stabbed, you can be assaulted, you can be infected or thrown on with biohazard chemicals or biohazard body fluids. And sometimes you can be shot at depending on the assignment you draw, and that includes transportation, court duty, and looking for fugitives out on escapes. Needless to say, corrections is not a first choice for people looking for a criminal justice degree, and it's also not the most glorious job compared to a forensic detective, patrolman in the community, or a highway patrolman that are high profile and made movies up quite a bit. Corrections is basically the end of the road when it comes to career choices in the criminal justice system. That's not to demean the position, it's just to illustrate just how most basically forgotten element corrections is in the criminal justice system. It's a mixture of boredom and pure adrenaline rushes at times. Now I know that sounds strange, but when you mix the word boredom and adrenaline rush, that's a big gap there between the two. So when you look at complacency and the boredom side, and you're looking at the evilism of terrorism, terror of fear, terror of harm, terror of being stabbed or killed for the day, it makes you realize that this is not your ordinary job, so you have to be on your toes at all times. However, the power of life and death is often interrupted with life-threatening situations that require first responders, and correctional officers are first responders, to act quickly and effectively to save lives, whether they're their own or others. It's the most violent work to work in and live in if you're an incarcerated felon. To admit that there are times when you are scared is an understatement. These officers live with fear while on duty and off duty, but none compared to the moments when encountered by the reality of prison work and its perils. It's one of the worst feelings an officer will ever experience and live with for the rest of their lives, as it's so unpredictable. The very first peril I'm going to talk about is the fact that we're dealing with the times that we spend inside the penitentiary around a volatile population of offenders that are violent and non-violent. It stands to reason that the focus on workplace dangers focuses on the violent sociopaths. It also stands to reason that these antisocial sociopath individuals prey on the weak as well as the strong. And then some are more brazen than others and will drop you or your partner if you drop your awareness. Working with felons with no compassion and histories of being cop killers, rapists, child molesters, and other violent behavior stands to reason that your own compassion sometimes takes the test. And to be honest with you, I'm going to cut the bull on this one. You tend to get numb at times, and the reason you get numb is to protect yourself from all the emotions that surround you. Aside from the fact that the public perception of these felons are often skewed or slanted, there are many other issues not discussed in the public's earshot or eyes. For no other reason than common sense and logic, it is basically an out-of-sight, out-of-mind environment. For correctional officers, the peril of harm of being killed relies on the skills to recognize such dangers. They must be aware at all times that at any moment they can encounter a violent predator and not hesitate the necessary force to use to stop them in their tracks. Unlike a policeman or state trooper, they are not armed, and they must rely on their self-defense skills and their use of chemical mace if issued mace, and the herd responders of fellow officers rushing to the scene to assist in the takedown or restraining violent inmate that has intent to kill you or harm you seriously that may leave you disabled or unable to work the rest of your life. There is no room for second guessing. Although heavily criticized by the media and non-elected politicians inside their own bureaucracy, they are guardians of justice inside the penitentiary, and they sacrifice their own feelings and their own lives to protect others. The second peril of working inside the penitentiary or large jails to cope with the ever-tightening budget cuts and staffing shortages. These topics are often top of the list of officers that work in such an environment, where the multitude of problems encountered are not just violent killers like I just talked about a minute ago, but overcoming the higher risk imposed by reduced manpower, ineffective training that is curtailed by funding. In a world where the population of incarcerated felons exceed millions or more, there are severe shortages in budget and more cuts to come. Ironically, it's the same people who created this mass incarceration agenda that are now drawing back the funds for the problem that they created. It's not to enhance the work environment one least bit and create it more dangerous than necessary on the job. Realizing the abandonment by society's lawmakers and budget creators, these officers don't have time to wallow in their own self-pity or other negative emotional feelings that they must take care of business regardless what they're given to work with. So this second peril is detrimental to good performance and effective public safety. The third peril related to correctional officers is the perception of those outside penitentiaries that officers are given the necessary tools and training to do the job. Without a doubt, the most common phrase a rookie hears coming out of the academy is, "Don't do it their way, do it my way." And that itself sets an example of what the culture needs to do in order to adjust working inside the penitentiaries. You do what you need to do to stay alive. When the need for training is sabotaged or compromised by cultural indifferences, makes it harmful or lethal for the officer. It puts him in a compromising situation and basically a catch-22. Training, good training, is a critical element of survival and is crucial to the success of being better than an average correctional officer. Due to budget cuts, training has become redundant and boring for the officers, giving them no new technology and leaving them pretty much on their own to invent their old skills to get better at doing the job. There is no intensity in training. The only intensity training you have in corrections are those of the volunteer emergency response team members. But as for the average correctional officer, there is no intensity in training other than the hands-on in first aid and CPR, and perhaps a couple of other role-playing scenarios where they learn how to communicate effectively. Agencies have no incentive to find better training techniques that would incur additional costs that are not approved in their budgets. Thus, denied. The fourth peril is the silent killer. This peril revolves around the stress and anxiety of the job and may lead to suicides, not something we talk about, but a reality in the workplace. The mere workplace culture, customs, and traditions induce the fear and paranoia that is required to stay alive. Thoughts of hostage taking a serious beating, or being stabbed are real, as well as knowing that any moment you may be assaulted with an HIV-loaded feces or urine or other body fluid. It's ridiculous the risk that they take for what they get paid. Correctional officers don't talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress, as it's a dirty word and shows a weakness. Officers don't talk about weepy subjects and not realize that this silence in fact perpetuates a problem even further. Suicide of another officer is often ignored, and murder by a convicted felon is considered a legitimate reason for distress and anxiety to fill their world. Working around considered risky people is risky business, not taken for granted for anybody that works inside the penitentiary and wears a badge of honor. The fifth and final peril is being targeted or working for administrators that are hiring poor managers and out-of-touch management styles. These officers must endure the most common peril shared in law enforcement, where the administration does not back up the officers on the line and where they're putting their lives in danger every day. Unable to perform their duties under such distress and difficulties, they tend to get a burnout. Administrators are often in a mode that ignores the realities of the job and therefore refuse to hear or see but it's considered to be a frontline problem for them. They refuse to discuss it, listen to the issues, and pretend that it's the other way around. And it's the officer's fault or the problem rather than the administration's responsibility. This type of ignorance by supervisors and managers leads to continued stress and will never disappear or go away in the workplace. It appears to be an unnecessary evil to endure. When the administration refuses to hear or see the problems, then it becomes the most dangerous of all that work there. The truth is, however, that the prison world is not dangerous because of the evil, but rather it's dangerous because often recorded and acknowledged in the history of our books. It is a dangerous place because of the narcissists and the arrogant people in charge won't admit that it's their fault and watch and let it happen again and again and over and over. Think about what I said, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. You can read my articles on yahoo.com or corrections.com. I freelance and I do a lot of consulting work in the sense of making things better and safer. And to all you out there wearing the badge of honor, be safe.